Did you know that every single cell in your body holds a secret ingredient that literally keeps it alive? I mean, without this substance, you, me, and honestly, every other living thing on Earth just wouldn't exist. It's called protoplasm. So today, we're going to decode this incredibly fascinating living substance, break down exactly how it functions, and see why it is the absolute foundation of life on our planet. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll kick things off with the architecture of life, then zoom straight into protoplasm, the living substance. Next, we'll map it all out in the cellular city map, shift our focus to acing the exam, and finally, wrap the whole thing up with a final review. All right, section 1, the architecture of life. Let's take this from the macro to the micro. Notice the massive scale difference we're looking at here. Over on the left, we've got the macro, right? A massive whale, a complex human being, a towering tree. But follow that directional arrow scaling all the way down to the right, and you hit the cell. Think of a cell as the absolute smallest brick in the grand structure of life. It's the fundamental, foundational unit that can independently perform all life processes. Whether we're talking about a microscopic bacterium or that giant whale, every single living organism is constructed from these tiny units. Understanding cells is exactly like understanding the individual building blocks of a skyscraper. Moving on to section 2, protoplasm, the living substance. Let's actually head inside the cell. So the crucial point here is that protoplasm isn't just one singular free-floating fluid. As you can see from the pointers popping up on the screen, it actually consists of 3 interconnected parts. First, you've got the cell membrane enclosing the space. Second, the cytoplasm, which is that jelly-like substance filling up the interior. And third, the nucleus sitting right at the core. When you hear the word protoplasm, your brain should immediately see this exact triad. It's the collective term for all 3 of these working together. Now, if we break down the physical mass of that protoplasm, the vast, overwhelming majority of it is actually water. Notice how the blue section of the chart completely dominates the space here. Water makes up roughly 70 to 90%, averaging around 80% of protoplasm's total mass. Only that remaining 20% or so is made of other components. That massive aqueous environment is absolutely essential. I mean, without it, none of those vital cellular activities could even happen. Section 3, the cellular city map. It's time for a structural metaphor. To really lock in how these components interact dynamically, let's map this microscopic cell to a bustling macro city. Track this with me on the board. The cell membrane acts as our city walls and gatekeeper, controlling permeability. The cytoplasm, well, that's the busy streets and factory floor where the actual metabolic reactions happen. And the nucleus is City Hall, the ultimate center for all decision-making. Keep this map pinned in your mind because we're going to look closely at exactly how these structural boundaries and workflows operate. Let's start right at the border, the cell membrane, also known as the plasma membrane. Notice those directional arrows pointing inward and outward, right through the membrane. This thing is not a solid, impenetrable wall. It's a highly sophisticated gatekeeper. Those arrows represent selective permeability. It precisely controls the flow of specific goods and substances entering and exiting our cellular city. Why? To maintain a completely stable internal environment, which is a crucial scientific concept we've labeled here as homeostasis. Without this strict boundary control, the city would literally just be in chaos. Okay, so once you pass through those gates, you enter the cytoplasm. Visually, I want you to imagine this as a dense, jelly-like substance that completely fills the cell. This is the busy factory floor of our city. Look at the flow lines highlighting all the activity happening here. This is the medium where essential metabolic reactions take place. All the raw materials that our gatekeeper let in, they're brought right here so the heavy lifting can happen. And who exactly is doing that heavy lifting on the factory floor? Well, notice these magnified insert bubbles. Floating within that cytoplasm are organelles, the specialized departments of our city. For instance, that first insert shows the mitochondria. Think of it as the power plant generating energy production. The second one shows the ribosomes, which are the manufacturing plants totally dedicated to protein synthesis. Every single organelle has a highly specific, vital task, and they all operate right within the bustling environment of the cytoplasm. Section 4, acing the exam.
Let's see how this builds into practical application.
Let's translate this into some actual exam prep. Here's a question for you. Name the 3 parts that make up the protoplasm of a cell. Take a second. Visualize those pointers from our earlier map. What were the 3 labels we called out? And here is how that sequence flows. Step 1, the outer boundary, the cell membrane. Step 2, the internal factory floor, the cytoplasm. Step 3, the decision-making center, the nucleus. By mentally stacking these 3 components together in this sequence, you accurately define the unified protoplasm. It's the gatekeeper, the streets, and city hall all working in perfect harmony to keep the cell alive.
All right, let's try another one. What is the main constituent in the protoplasm of a cell? Now careful here, we aren't looking for structural parts this time. We're looking for the primary physical mass.
Watch this scale indicator fill right up. Boom. There is your answer, water, making up 70 to 90% of the total mass. Now, writing just the word water on a test might get you partial credit, but dropping that 70 to 90% data point, that proves total mastery. It shows your examiner you understand that this massive aqueous environment is absolutely crucial for facilitating all of those cellular activities on the factory floor.
Now check out the split screen comparison, because it targets a really common student mistake. Often students kind of blur the lines between the roles of the cell membrane and the cytoplasm. You want to keep them strictly separated in your mind. On the left side here, the cell membrane is exclusively about boundary control and selective permeability. It's strictly about who gets in and who gets out. On the right, the cytoplasm is strictly the internal site of metabolic reactions and organelle activity. It's where the work is actually done. Gatekeeper versus factory floor. Keep those distinct and you definitely won't drop easy points.
Section 5, Final Review. Time for a rapid-fire summary. Notice how perfectly linear the logic is when we lay it out top to bottom like this. Cells are the smallest bricks of life. Inside that brick is the living substance, protoplasm. That protoplasm is a formula: cell membrane plus cytoplasm plus nucleus. The membrane controls entry and exit to maintain homeostasis. The cytoplasm is the internal site of metabolic reactions, and the organelles are those specialized functional departments doing the work inside the cytoplasm. If you can visually track this list right down from top to bottom, you absolutely understand the foundational architecture of life. My absolute best tip for you before we go: practice by explaining these concepts in your own words. Don't just passively read your textbook. Draw out the diagrams, label the variables yourself, point to the cell membrane, and explicitly explain selective permeability out loud. Active visual and verbal recall is honestly how you truly lock this knowledge down. Finally, I want to leave you with this kind of provocative thought. We know the membrane controls the borders. The cytoplasm is the factory floor, and that 70 to 90% of this entire system is water. So what exactly happens to this bustling cellular city and that crucial homeostasis if that primary component, water, begins to dry up? Think about how the macro environment impacts the micro brick. Keep exploring, keep labeling those diagrams, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.